Eric, you're up next. Hello, sir.
This is a hand out of 2-5 game at Rivers in Chicago in Des Plaines.
Oh, we had this. You didn't call. You haven't called in before, right? We had a
Nope,
guy.
you took one of these last week. I think it was your first one, but yep,
Yep, so it's Rivers to Plains in
yep.
Illinois, right? 2-5.
So
It's a
it's
one
just
K cap, or
yeah, it's 300 to 1K.
all right, 300. And they've only been open for a few months, right?
Few months. Yep. They got a lot of the like business from Potawatomi and Milwaukee, and then get a lot of things from Hammond now that they're closed on weekends and everything. So, all right. So there is going to be two villains in the hand. Villain one is the cutoff. He has 1800. Villain two will be the button. He has us both covered, and I will be in the straddle to 10 with right around the same as the cutoff, so about 1900
Okay.
at most. So,
Okay.
so it folds around to the cutoff. Like I said, I had the straddle to 10, and the cutoff makes it $35.
Okay.
The button then flat calls. Small blind and big blind get out of the way, and I look down at 10-7 of diamonds, and I just complete.
So cutoff opens to 35 into your $10 to the left of the big blind straddle. Button calls, right? And then it's over to you. Is that right? Over to you. And you call with 10-7 of diamonds.
Correct.
You're what, calling 25 for about 87? Is that right?
Correct.
Something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, closing the action. It's like, I mean, you see most people call here. I mean, I think that
I would say, I mean, you'll see it was a splashy table to start. I would actually say the cutoff wasn't one of the splashier players, so it's pretty speculative, but I mean, it was a pretty loose table in general. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to keep this to the gap suited connectors, I can get on board with it. This one's kind of, I mean, this is one where if I was playing on a real game, I'd fold, but if I was playing on Hustler Casino Live, I'd call to get the VPIP up a little bit. So that's how kind of on the cusp it is. So Hero calls, and it looks like we're at somewhere around maybe, 115, something like that, right?
yeah, 112. So
Okay.
yep.
All right. So 110.
So the flop comes out. It's 8 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 7 of hearts.
So Hero flops trips. Okay.
Flop trips, yep. And then I opt to check. The cutoff, the original raiser, bets 40. The button flat calls, and then I have my first decision, which at the time was I didn't really want to blow anyone off of their hands. I think it becomes kind of obvious where I might be if I was to raise right there.
I mean, you can raise some draws here for sure, right? I mean, this is not like
Yep.
it's 7-7 deuce rainbow. I mean, it's a front door club draw. There are some straight draws.
There's some straight draws, yep.
I mean, I wouldn't. This is a little bit because I think that the call that we put up on YouTube today was a spot where a guy slow played a set of sevens, not flopping trip sevens, and that was
Yep, I watched that one, yeah.
right, and that was a situation where the field caller bet last to act, and this guy called in the blind, and I was like, that's probably what I would do here. You've got the pre-flop raiser betting and a call from the button, so more likely than not, I would probably start raising here on a draw heavy board. I mean, I don't think it's not 100%, but I think that the more multi-way, I would probably start to tend. I mean, one of the other things too is kind of interesting is the deeper you get, the worse trips start to get called as almost like a stack protection thing when it goes back call. But I don't think that you guys are anywhere near deep enough really to think about that, because with the $10 you're less than 200 big blinds. I mean, I would have done a lot of raising. Sounds to me like you call.
I did just call, yep. So I just flat, the pot now should be at $232.
Okay. I mean, the other thing too here is that not only are there a lot of cards that will be action killing cards, but just the sheer fact, if you can picture the cutoff betting and then getting two calls, even if he has an overpair here, and like say the turns like the deuce of diamonds or something like that, a lot of guys will just check for pot control, thinking that somebody has a 7 and they're sandbagging. So that's why I don't like to sort of continue to, allow my opponent to continue to bet. Also, too, if you wake up on a later street, I tend to think that that's a little bit stronger, so.
Yeah, so we'll go to the turn, and the turn is a 6 of hearts, which So now 9-10 gets there, although
Yep.
I do block that a little bit.
Yep.
Puts out another flush draw, um, and I opt to check again.
Okay.
The cutoff also checks, but now the button bets into both of us for $120.
So the button bets 120 now. So preflop raiser checks. You check, preflop raiser checks. Now the button bets 120, which is a little bit of an in-between size. Obviously, it's possible that 9-10 comes in. It's also possible that, he might have had, you might have been sandbagging as well. The only thing that I would say here is that it's very, very unlikely, I feel like, that the button is betting off like 8x here too. Like he's kind of scared as well because the cutoff will naturally check a lot of overpairs here. So it would surprise me if the button had a hand as weak as that and was betting something for protection. You look down and you're like, what about like 9s, 10s, jacks? Well, he would have to flat that pre. Number one, it's late position open. Maybe, it's possible, and bet the turn. I'm not going to fold if I'm you right now, but I think that probably raising now would be a little bit of an overplay, especially without a good 7 and also 9-10 coming in. Yeah.
Right. So now I don't feel good about raising, obviously. Not even sure my my trip sevens are going to be good. So I just flat, but now the cutoff also flats.
Well, so what do we think? So we know that the button could have these hands that beat us. It's unclear to me what else he is betting here. Maybe he's betting. I don't see. It's a little bit. The button should be actually fairly strong because I think he's going to take a card a lot too. I think you're sandbagging a 7 because again, just to pull it back, if the button has a flush draw here and the cutoff checks turn and you've overcalled the flop, that button usually doesn't fire now because, like I said, you can be sandbagging, the cutoff can be checking in overpair. If you put yourself in the button spot, you're going to be checking through a lot. Now, when you call and then the cutoff overcalls, this is usually going to be one of two things. It's a stubborn overpair that doesn't want to fold given the pot odds, right? Because it's 230 plus 120 and 140. It's like, almost 500, 120 for him to call. So he's getting 4-1 in turn pot odds. Or he has a flush draw himself as well that bet the flop and now is kind of slowing down because he thinks somebody, he doesn't want to get raised. King, queen of club, something like that, whatever, even ace X of club, something like that. That's what I would sort of tag the cutoff at. I'm not overly concerned about the cutoff in this spot, except if a club were to come in and you don't obviously fill up. I have the pot now at just a hair under 600.
Correct. Just a hair under 600.
Okay. Yep.
So we get to the river and it's literally what is probably the best card in the deck. It is the 10 of clubs.
So the flush comes in.
The flush comes in, but I've also boated up.
So you make a boat. The flush comes in. It also puts a one-liner out there to a 9.
Yeah, so any 9 is now also a straight. Yep. And so I guess my first question before I say what I do is, does the suit of the 10 change your action of what you're going to do? If it would have been an offsuit 10, would you have done something different than it being a 10 that completes the flush? Either the back door or the front door?
I would be way more apt to lead here. Well, here's the thing. If you get tricky, here's the thing. So if we sort of go with my whole read with the button where he actually, you're not 100% sure how strong he is, right? If he had like a set, like a 9-7, although you don't beat many 7s now. If he had 9-10, something like that, which is straight, all those hands are going to check back now, given this action when it goes bet, call. So, checking it over to him and hoping that he's going to bet is not something I want to do here. With that being said, and then obviously the cutoff will check an overpair. Will he bet a flush here? Whenever I'm in these situations in small stakes live games, even though you could say it's like really unbalanced, it's definitely highly exploitable. I don't like to give the betting lead up on a card like this. Well, we never had it, but I don't want to continue to let the people sort of check and flow and let them try to bet when they're going to check back so much. The other flip side to this too is that not only does someone have to bet here, but they also have to bet and call a check raise, where you could just come out and bet 500, 600 get called possibly by a straight, get called by clubs, where those other hands would have to not only bet but also call a check raise for you to go for a check raise to be more profitable. And I think talking through it, I would probably like to rather bet kind of on the larger side here, as opposed to trying to go for a check raise and getting cutesy.
Yeah, so I was pretty cute about it. I thought that if the 10 had been like the offsuit one, that I would lead out because it was just more on, to get any 9 or other 7 to call. I thought because it was a club, it would be, more often that someone hitting the flush would bet into the pot.
By the way, too. By the
yeah.
way, so you ended up checking. By the way, too.
I did.
I'm not advocating a crazy huge bet. Whatever a straight would call from the button, I think.
Yep.
Maybe 400.
400, 400 to 500,
something like that. I mean, the other thing too is also brings a one-liner out there too. So, if the guy had 9-10, or if he had a 9, say he's got 9-7, now he's just chopping with any straight. I mean, obviously the cutoff should never call with an overpair now, but he might have a flush. So, but you check, right? Here it checks.
I check. The cutoff pretty quickly checks, and then the button just flips over his hand, which is 9-7 off.
9. I didn't know it. I did not. I swear to God, I didn't know it. So you actually had him beat. This is why sometimes
I had him beat the whole time. Yeah.
It's kind of why sometimes it's hard to fold on turn, even though there aren't much. So the hero was ahead. 9-7.
He had turned
right.
open-ended with his trips.
Yeah.
Although one of his straight cards was my gin card. So
right. So he turns over 9-7, which is not surprising. Okay, and then what? You turn over your hand?
Yeah, I'm like kind of cursing at myself, and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't bet that. And I turn over my hand, and then the cutoff kind of chuckles to himself and just turns over his made Queen Jack flush.
Wow. So the cutoff did have a flush.
He had a flush and just was. I don't know if he was checking because he thought that the button would bet and it was his plan to check raise, or if he just had the inclination that one of us was sandbagging our hand. So
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of the way the cutoff played it either, to be perfectly honest with you, because for the same reasons I talked about, right? Like I want to. Well, yours is even more extreme because now you didn't have a flush bet. But for the same reasons that I talked about why I would bet in your spot, the cutoff, like he can't expect the villain here to be betting, straights and unfilled 7. So like, what is he checking? Like say for example, he checks here and then the cutoff, and the button bets like 400 and then you call. Okay. Is he folding? I mean, that would be the only thing that I could think of why you would check the river. Like everyone knows that I'm not a huge fan of check calling the river at live low stakes, and this is exactly why. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to have a plan of check calling here when 9-7 checks behind. There's empirical evidence, right? So I'm definitely not a fan of the play, but it doesn't surprise me, which is why I tend to want to lead here.
Because there's still a good chance I could have, even at a bet of 300. Like I don't know if 9-7 calls at this point with the flush coming in, but there's still the chance where like he just makes a crying call and I get both of them to throw in half pot bet.
I mean, you're definitely going to get called by one of these guys.
The flush for sure is
right.
calling. I don't think the 9-7 with the caller in between
right.
is going to call anymore. But
right, and then again, like I said, this is a spot where, say for example, the cutoff bets 300 and then you check raise him. That is, if he's any type of player, I don't know if he's going to
raise anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to call. The only time that you might get more money here by trying to go for a check raise is if he went 300 and then, the button called and then you check raise and then they both folded, you'd get slightly more. But right. I mean, that's a lot of what ifs, right? So anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much.
All right.